We're all here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for returning. I'm thrilled to be with you. And this is our second evening. And as Arianna said, this is going to be our the focus will be on Inferno. So just briefly, we have a visual representation here of the whole journey. And there are many of those. But this one I like especially, so you will see it a number of times. And so the journey of Inferno is that of a linear descent into the bowels of the earth. And we will talk about this quite a bit tonight. And then I will show you how the journey evolves over in the second and third portion of the poem. So before we begin, let's look at some a little bit of technical aspects about the structure, the rhythm, and the rhyme of the commedia. Okay, even though we will be mostly referring to it in English, but I think it will be nice to just read a few lines from time to time. And it certainly is interesting for you to see how Dante came up with the structure as a whole, which is mirrored also in the verse structure of the poem. Okay. So we have, as you all know, a poem that is divided into 3 canticles, and the 3 canticles form a whole of 100 cantos. And how did Dante manage to do that? He put essentially 1 introductory canto, and then 33 cantos of Inferno, 33 cantos of Purgatorio, and 33 cantos of Paradiso. And I've put here a little bit of time frame for those. As you can see, as we said last time, he started writing after his exile.
Can you hear not?
Probably around 1304, and ended Inferno around 1309. Arianna, could you please mute everyone? Hello? And then Purgatorio, second canticle, which he started writing as he was finishing Inferno. We have evidence that he finished writing Purgatorio around 1313, and the last canticle was the one that was finished shortly before his passing, and the years when it is speculated that it was written between 1316 and 21. So as you can see, a very long process that somehow spans the entire time of Dante's exile. Now, what kind of verse is Dante using? Well, Dante decided essentially to invent a form of poetry that was never existed before, and which is called terza rima, and or terzina. So it's a stanza that uses a pattern of rhymes like so, and I will show you this in a minute a little bit more clearly. ABA, BCB, CDC, and so on. Okay, so it's an open-ended structure that you can add as many terzinas as you want, but at the same time, these are linked to one another by way of these rhymes. Dante invented the terza rima, and it was used over and over in the Italian poetry. But as you can see, it was also adopted somehow in the English language. In terms of the length of the verse is the 11 syllables, hendecasyllable, which can have then different stresses, okay? One on the 4th and the 10th, or one on the 6th and the 10th. And again, I'll show you this in a minute. So here we're just looking at one manuscript, and I've tried to highlight this by showing you different the rhymes with different colors, just to highlight the terzina. But maybe you can see this here more clearly, okay? So as you can see, these are chained or linked rhymes. And if you look at to the right, you can see also the different accents of the rhyme. So, nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, mi ritrovai per una selva oscura, che la diritta via era smarrita. So this is the kind of rhythm that the hendecasyllables and the terza rima gives to the poem. Now, let's get going. So these are the cantos that I suggested that you maybe read if you had time. If you couldn't, it doesn't matter. We will go through the highlights of them together. So as I said before, Inferno is made up of 34 cantos, and the first canto, and also the second actually, are cantos that are devoted to what we could call the staging of the narrative. So Dante tells us how he got into this journey. And the first lines are all very well known. I just quoted the first three. So Dante says he was lost. He was lost in a dark forest. And that is not enough, okay? He felt that he had lost his way. And so if you look at the first three lines here, the way in which he begins the poem by saying, when I had journeyed half of our life's way, I found myself within a shadowed forest, for I had lost the path that does not stray. Or actually, the path that doesn't stray was lost. So Dante, as you can see, is playing here with two adjectives, nostra vita and mi ritrovai. So we immediately have this double dimension of the I, my direct experience. If you remember last time I said for the Vita Nuova already, Dante uses the autobiographical stance, which at the time was totally unusual and even unknown to most writers. But it brings the reader or the listener in from the very first line by saying our life. And then already from the very beginning of this canto, we are in a situation in which Dante talks about his journey, being the journey, and we can immediately visualize this dark forest and all that is going to unfold. But at the same time, the first line says, when I had journeyed half of our life's way. Okay, so what is this? In the olden times, there was this idea that the span of human life was on average 70 years. And so 35 years would be the half of that span. And he visualizes that the journey of our life as a path. And so we have, the poem begins with a narrative that is immediately inscribed within what we could call a symbolic level. And that symbolic level is telling us that we are on a journey, and this journey is the journey of human life on earth. So it is through that journey that Dante finds himself lost. Again, a very interesting expression, because he is saying that he is lost, and at the same time, he also saying, I found myself. So the poem is the narrative of someone who got lost, and the very moment he realized he got lost, he also found himself again. And this is stated again in the following lines. He says that the dark forest was hardly better than death, but to retell the good that I discovered there, I will tell you the story. So it's a huge challenge. It's like death, and at the same time, it is the beginning of salvation. Do you remember last time we talked about saluto, salute, salvation, and health? So Dante is on the brink of death. And why? Because not only he is lost in the forest, but he also has encountered there a number of, sorry, I'm flipping through things here, of obstacles in the form of 3 wild beasts. And these 3 wild beasts are preventing him from moving forward, okay, as we can see here. And at the moment when he feels that he will never be able to reach what he would like to reach, which is the top of a hill, because of the 3 wild beasts that prevent him from moving forward in his path, then he says he sees someone else, okay? So the someone else that appears is a shadow. So the ghost of a human being. And I'm sure that if you were to see a ghost, you would be very scared. But Dante says that compared to the fright that he had experienced through the wild beasts, seeing a ghost, so a kind of the shadow of a human presence, was actually something that gave him hope. This shadow does not immediately reveal his identity. Dante will be called to understand in whose presence he is, so that the moment he realizes that the figure that is next to him is the soul or the shadow of the ancient poet Virgil, then Dante will choose to link up with him and to recognize him as a teacher. So a father figure and a guide. Virgil tells him, I see your predicament. You will never be able to reach your goal, the summit of the hill bathed in sunlight. And he says, a te conviene tenere altro viaggio. Okay, it is another path that you must take. And so what is that other path that Dante must take? Virgil says, well, we need to go through the beyond of human life on earth. This is what is required for you to reach your goal. And Dante was so terrified by the dark forest that he, at the end of Canto 1, says, yes, Virgil, whatever you say, I will follow you. But then at the beginning of Canto 2, as they walk towards, Virgil is leading towards this other altro viaggio, Dante says, where are we going? What did you say that where is it that we have to go? And when he realizes that really what is required of him is this journey through the beyond, well, Dante loses courage and he says, well, I don't think this is for me. Okay, so he says, why should I go there? Who sanctions it? I am not Aeneas, I am not Saint Paul. So these were, of course, figures in the tradition of people who had taken a journey into the beyond. And he says, neither I nor others think myself so worthy. Therefore, if I consent to start this journey, I fear my venture may be wild and empty. You can see in Italian here is folle. So folle is the opposite of something reasonable or of something solid or wise, okay? But Dante then says to Virgil, you are wise, you know far more than what I say. But Dante structures the narrative in such a way that he, as a wayfarer, is the one who must choose to follow Virgil. Virgil can give suggestions, can use of a good measure of rhetoric, but Dante is the one who follows, who has to choose. So at this point, in order for Dante to embrace the journey, Virgil tells him how it happened that he came to his help. And so here we have in Canto 2 this little narrative of Virgil who tells Dante, well, I was there in limbo and all of a sudden I saw a presence next to me of this feminine figure who came to me from heaven and asked me for my help. And she asked me to come next to you and to help you. And Virgil says, when I saw her and I heard her request, I immediately accepted, and here I am. And so Beatrice says, I am Beatrice to Virgil. I am Beatrice who sent you on. I come from where I most long to return. Love prompted me, that love which makes me speak. When once again I stand before my Lord, then I shall often let him hear your praises. And Virgil says to her, O Lady of Virtue, the sole reason why the human race surpasses all that lies beneath the heaven with the smallest fears. This is how Virgil defines Beatrice. So welcome is your wish that even if it were already done, it would seem tardy. All you need do is let me know your will. And on the basis of this, of course, Dante changes his mind and says, she compassionate who has helped me, and you who courteous obeyed so quickly the true words that she had addressed to you. You with your words have so disposed my heart to longing for this journey, I return to what I was at first prepared to do. And so by the end of Canto 2, Dante is ready to follow Virgil. So before we follow the two wayfarers into the journey, let's just stop for a minute and ask ourselves, in the Italy of the early 1300s, Dante is writing a poem in which he is going to tell us about a journey of a visionary and prophetic nature in the beyond. And he says, I had two guides. One of them was Beatrice, whom we know to be a contemporary Florentine young woman who died too young, certainly. And the other one, whom she summoned from limbo, is a pagan poet who lived about 1300 years before Dante. Now, these two guides will be complemented by, later on in Purgatorio and Paradiso, by other two figures, the figure of Statius, who is another late antique poet, and the figure of Saint Bernard, who was, of course, a medieval saint, the founder of the Templar order, and also a devotee of the Virgin Mary. Why am I saying this? Well, because think for a minute. No one before Dante had written a poem of this kind, but there were many references in the religious literature of the time to journeys into the beyond. And typically, these journeys into the beyond entailed a guide, and this guide would be a saint or an angel. In the Islamic tradition, Muhammad himself tells of his journey into the beyond, and he says the Archangel Gabriel was his guide. Now, you're going to say, well, Dante didn't know about Muhammad's journey. The issue is very debated. A text in Latin existed of which Dante might have had knowledge that told the story of Muhammad's journey in the beyond. We cannot solve the problem, and in any case, Dante, even if he was aware of Muhammad's journey, he certainly made the narrative so completely his own that we're dealing with something rather different. But in any case, I would like to focus your attention on the extraordinary and certainly not obvious choice that Dante makes of having these two guides, a feminine figure from Florence, a young woman from Florence, and a pagan poet. Now, with regard to Beatrice, actually, Beatrice, when she tells the story of how she came to Limbo to seek Virgil's help, she also says that she came because Saint Lucy came to her, and Saint Lucy, in turn, was requested of help by the Virgin Mary. So what we have is actually a kind of feminine trinity. The Virgin Mary is the one who realizes that Dante is lost, has lost his path. She calls for Saint Lucy's help. Saint Lucy goes to Beatrice, and Beatrice descends into Limbo to ask for Virgil's help. So this is how the narrative is set in motion. And so I like this image by Blake, where you can somehow see all of the emotional components of this. On the one hand, the wild beasts, and on the other, this feminine presence that is there to protect Dante and to steer him in the right direction through the presence of Virgil. So let's now begin this journey with Canto 3, where Dante and Virgil enter through the gate of hell. The gate is a speaking gate. Somehow there is a writing on the gate itself that says, "Through me the way into the suffering city, through me the way to the eternal pain, through me the way that runs among the lost. Justice urged on my high artificer, my maker was divine authority, and the highest wisdom and the primal love. Before me nothing but eternal things were made, and I endure eternally. Abandon every hope who enter here. Dante, of course, is once again terrified when he sees this. Okay, lasciate ogni speranza voi che entrate. But Virgil tells him, well, here is actually where one must leave behind all hesitation. Here, every cowardice must meet its death. Okay, so whereas the door says abandon every hope, Virgil, as Dante's guide, instills in Dante hope and courage. And those are the fundamental elements of the moral life that will guide Dante and Virgil into this journey. Because there is one essential difference between the destiny of those who have entered through this door, meaning the souls of the dead who dwell eternally in Inferno, and Dante. Dante will enter hell not in order to remain there, but in order to go through and get out of it at the other end of the journey. This is an image by Doré, very famous artist who has visualized the Commedia. And I very much like this because it shows us how this journey is a journey into darkness. And this is the darkness of the bowels of the earth, but it is also the darkness of the soul, the human soul. So the two are inseparable. And in embarking upon this journey, Dante is in fact asked to go and face the darkest aspect of the human beings, encounter them and face them and come to a conscious relationship with that darkness. So in Canto 3, Dante and Virgil, after they move into hell, are here. They come to a river, and this river is the river Acheron, where there is a ferry boat and a ferryman, Charon. And Charon is ferrying the souls of the dead from one shore to the other. So this is the way they enter hell. Dante witnesses the situation, and he's terrified to realize that the souls in following Charon, in entering the boat, are in fact desirous to do so. And Virgil explained, because celestial justice spurs them on so that their fear is turned into desire. So this is the first glimpse that Dante catches of the situation in hell. And this is such a terrifying realization that Dante actually faints. And so he crosses over the Acheron on Charon's boat, unconscious of it. We have no witnessing of that crossing in the poem. When he comes to the other side, he recovers his awareness, but there is this shift, this moment of unconsciousness here that is worth noticing. So the Dante's hell, it looks like a funnel, as you can see here in Botticelli's visualization of it. And before we travel through it, we should maybe take a moment to realize a little bit, or to look at the structure that Dante gives to this Inferno. So we have talked about what happens at the outskirts, outside Inferno. We have entered the door and we have just crossed Acheron. And we said that this Acheron is a first transition moment, or one that we can say represents a kind of obstacle to, there was no obstacle at the door. Dante and Virgil were not stopped at that door. But Acheron requires a crossing where Dante turns out to be unconscious. Then we have 5 circles, and these 5 circles are those of upper hell, which Virgil explains later on in Canto 11, that are the circles in which the souls of those who failed through shortcoming of the senses are meeting their and facing the suffering that is the outcome of their shortcomings. Then after that, we come to another challenge, another difficult situation where Virgil and Dante cannot proceed out of their own will. They need help. And this is here. These are the walls of the inner city of hell, which Dante calls the city of this, the city of the devil. They proceed through that, thanks to the help of a divine messenger that will come and open the door for them. And behind that, there is the 6th circle, which Dante calls of the heretics, where a major encounter, as we will see, takes place. And after that, there is another circle, which is the circle of violence. So beyond the walls of the city of this, the sins or the shortcomings are those that come from what, again, Virgil explained as being malice, okay? So on the upper part of hell, we have shortcomings of the senses, incontinence. But beyond the walls of the city of this, the problem is malice, or in other words, corruption of the will and of the mind. And the first circle is that of violence. Once they have gone through the different aspects of that circle, Virgil and Dante come to another obstacle, another impassable dimension. And in order to go beyond that, they will again need some sort of transcendental help. What lies beyond that chasm is another aspect of malice, meaning fraud. And fraud is defined as deceit against those who have no cause to trust. So Dante devotes a lot of cantos to the different aspects of fraud. There are 10 different pockets of fraud that he has to go through with Virgil. And once they are done with that, there is yet another impassable obstacle, and that is a deep pit. Again, they will need the help of someone beyond their means to descend further into the last section of hell, which is where the third aspect of malice, meaning treason, is on display for them. So treason is deceit against those who have cause to trust. And at the very bottom of, they will meet with Lucifer, the sovereign, the emperor of hell. So we will go through, however briefly, this structure, this hell with Dante. Before we do so, I would like to point your attention to the fact that taking the cue from classical antiquity, Dante describes hell as marked by different rivers. And we want to pay attention with this because Dante put a lot of care into this. So the first river is that we already mentioned, we already saw of Acheron. Then there is a brief reference to Limbo's lovely stream, but then just next to the walls or surrounding the walls of the city of this, we have the swampy and murky Styx River. And with in the circle of the violence, we have another river, the river of blood, Phlegeton, the flaming river of blood. And at that point, in Canto 14, Dante explains to Dante how these rivers are generated, and we will see that in a minute. But he says all of these rivers come together, all of these waters come together to form a waterfall, a huge waterfall. And all of these water, therefore, collects and goes down through the lower part of hell, where it meets or forms what Dante calls Cocytus, which in antiquity was the river of wailing, and Dante represents as a frozen lake. And in this frozen lake is where the traitors are trapped. And the freezing of the waters is caused by the wings of Lucifer. But so what I hope you begin to see is this paradoxical realization that as we go through hell, we realize that hell is not the place, well, there is a lot of fire, but essentially hell ends not in the heat of fire, but in the freezing death that is represented by Cocytus. So the lack of love, the lack of compassion is what causes the structure of hell to take place. And it's this freezing experience of death that characterizes the final moments in hell. So let's go, I just want to go back for a minute to this Canto 14. So Virgil takes care to explain that these four infernal rivers, they all originate from an underground statue called Il Gran Veglio, the old man in Crete, from whose cracked body tears have been trickling into the depths of the earth since the end of the Golden Age. And the progressive downfall of humanity through historical times is what actually this statue portrays. So why is this important? Because through this, we understand that for Dante, history does not mean progress towards something better. Quite the contrary. Beyond the illusion of material improvement, and as we said last time, wealth is the phenomenon that characterizes change in Florence at the time of Dante's life. The reality for Dante is one of progressive corruption of the human mind, caught into the illusion of grandiosity under infinite guises, as the Inferno presents. So the rivers within whose waters and around whose banks the damned undergo their tortures originate in nothing but human tears. In other words, the infernal waters are the unacknowledged, unconscious, and irrepressible counterpart to the inexorable demise that the patriarchal body politics has condemned itself to in its short-sighted hubris. That very hubris which gets forever trapped into the infernal pit of its self-reflective and ultimately self-directed and self-inflicted misery. This is the other great realization that comes through this journey. Ostensibly, apparently, this is God's punishment. In reality, the souls are punishing themselves through this process into hell. And it's their inability to leave hell that traps them there. So I think maybe this is the time for a little pause here. And maybe like last time, we can have 5 minutes where we can ask a few questions and see if you have any questions or comments.
Daniela, may I ask a quick question, Renato?
Yes, of course, Renato.
Yeah, so I find it ironic that the very thing that Dante was accused of by the Florentines is something that is deep in the bowels of hell. In other words, treason and fraud, and that, you know, he's not affected, it seems, by that, but he considers it a terrible sin, obviously, because it's at the bottom of hell.
Right.
And it's interesting that's the very thing that he was accused of.
Well, but he always said that this accusation was unjust and unfounded. So
this is his proof.
In what way would he have been
no, I'm just saying that it's interesting that in a way he's saying I'm innocent, I guess, is what's really happening, because otherwise he would not be making it through this journey, through hell, and then through purgatory and into heaven.
Well, this is the thing. He is not necessarily innocent. In order to make it through, he needs to face all of the implications of the dark parts of the human soul.
Okay, thank you.
And that is precisely, I think, the amazing modernity of Dante's journey. It's the realization of the fact that if there is no conscious facing of these dark sides, there is no way to salvation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask just about the inability of the souls to leave hell? So that's self-imposed. That's not imposed by any external force.
Well, if
it's a bit like the karmic principle of, you know, the hell that you're in is because of the way you let your mind work. You know, you could get yourself out of it.
Absolutely. If we had not just one evening to go through all of Inferno, but a little bit more time, we could actually look at this much more closely. But we will see this with Paolo and Francesca, for example. But the souls repeatedly exhibit in the way in which they speak this total unconsciousness of the fact that it is their behavior, their choices, and they are, even after death, they keep making the same statements, the same choices. So it's this complete blindness to this compulsion in understanding or reading the world in which they do, that essentially condemns them there. And why am I saying this? Well, because after that there is Purgatorio and Paradiso, and the souls in Purgatorio react to their life on earth in a completely different manner.
Can I just say, oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Just the whole idea of blindness, that what you were just saying, that there was like Saint Lucy, the patron saint of eyes.
Yes.
Then he has Saint Paul who went blind. And then he has, like, didn't Aeneas's father was blind as well? He was carrying him on his shoulder. I thought he was blind as well. This whole idea of darkness and people that can't see and are looking for light. I found that whole first canto, the whole idea of like looking for light in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also like to point out that I see through the book, to the poem, where he talks, it's about the secular and the religious. So there are two streams, secular and religious. And I say that because Enea, secular, but he talks about Saint Paul,
yes.
religious.
Yes.
Then Virgil, secular.
Yes.
And Beatrice, religious. Stavros, the poet, secular. Saint Bernard, religious.
Yes.
So there is this two trends. And also that when he talks about nel mezzo del cammino della nostra vita, he's, it's talk about himself, but says nostra, which this journey is representative not only of himself, but of the whole humankind,
right.
of the world. So he's doing that in our behalf, in a sense. Right. It's for him and for others. And that's another thing, when you talk about the different rivers, could that be one river? It's just, not different stages of the river, but not separate rivers.
Right, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Although those are the names of the rivers of antiquity, in Dante's understanding of recreation, as Virgil presents it, these are all different names and parts of the same river. Okay. That is the river of tears that come out of the human experience.
Okay. Yeah.
And with regard to what you just said of the secular and religious, so thank you for mentioning this. So we have these two components in the same way that we could say we have the Christian and the pagan, so, or the contemporary and the classical. And what is Dante doing? Dante is the third. So if you have these dichotomies, Dante is the one who is called to bring them together. And so Dante's poem is the place of conjunctio of these opposites.
Yeah, and in view of the history of Italy at the time, it's like saying, okay, just a dichotomy, but we have to find a point of encounter, like a triangle, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And yes. He's looking for the synthesis.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Very much so. So that means that Dante's awareness of those two dimensions, especially what we could call the spiritual dimension of pagan antiquity and of Christianity, was of central importance to him. And so it's one important element to keep in mind in reading the Commedia, which is full of invocations to the Muses, to Apollo, which are not just the rhetorical stances. There is something much more substantial to that. Okay, so are we ready for continuing our journey?
I just would like to say that unfortunately the system, despite the fact that we have paid for the upgrading, it still has a cap at 100. So I'm sorry for those of you who have been left behind outside this waiting room, in the waiting room, and I will have to call Zoom and see why this has happened. I'm so sorry, but it's not our fault. So we'll anyway, this
or even more sorry for those who are outside and cannot even get to enter.
Thank you, Daniela.
Okay, so now let's see. As I said before, we're just we just have time to look at a few episodes now in the second part of our journey with Dante. And the first one, of course, is one of the most famous episodes in the canticle of Inferno. So, as you remember, we begin in Upper Hell in the area of the so-called incontinence, and Paolo and Francesca are lovers. So they are in that circle where the souls of what is called the lustful are transported by a whirlwind. So, of course, this whirlwind is the manifestation of the passion that transported them in life. And Dante witnesses this with great dismay because he himself, as we know, has experienced very deeply the feeling of love and of being in love. So he cannot understand why lovers would be in hell, even though in the upper part of hell. And so the process of confronting this and trying to understand takes place through an encounter, not with the souls of the past, but with two souls of people who lived shortly before Dante, and somehow, therefore, could speak of that experience of love in terms that were very close to those that Dante himself uses in his poetry. Francesca is the one who speaks here, while her lover Paolo remains silent throughout. And so Dante asks her the question, what happened? What went wrong? Can you tell me what your experience of love was? And so Francesca answers, as you can see, with 3 terzine, so guess many, 9 lines. As we mentioned last time, 9 is a very important number for Dante. And you can see that each one of these 3 terzine begins with the word amor. And Francesca is mimicking very, very well the kind of love poetry, the themes of love, as we saw them in the Vita Nuova, in the first lines. So she says, love, who so fast brings flame to generous hearts, seized him with feeling for the lovely form now torn from me. The harm of how still rankles, okay? And this is a way, almost an echo of some of the sonnets in the Vita Nuova. And then she carries on and she says, love who no loved one pardons love's requite, seized me for him so strongly in the light that as you see, he does not leave me yet. And then the last terzina gives us the outcome of this love, which is not life, it is death. Love drew us onwards to consuming death. Cain's ice awaits the one who quenched our lives. These words, born on us from them, were theirs. So the last reference here is to Gianciotto. Cain attende chi a vita ci spense. Gianciotto was Paolo's brother and Francesca's husband. Gianciotto, upon discovering their love, killed them. And so, as you can see, what we have here, Francesca knows and is telling Dante that if they are caught in the whirlwind of upper hell, Gianciotto will end his posthumous life in the icy lake of Cocytus at the very bottom of hell, because he is considered a traitor. So a terrible tragedy, of course, in which Gianciotto is much worse placed than they are. And even so, where is the problem with Paolo and Francesca? Everything begins here with the generous hearts, actually, il cor gentil, so the noble hearts, exactly the vocabulary of the Vita Nuova. But then we have this reference to la bella persona che mi fu tolta. So Francesca, in describing her very pure and noble love, is actually demonstrating, although she's plainly unaware of this, that she is confusing the physical attraction with the realization of love as a cosmic force, which on the other hand is exactly, as we saw last time, what characterizes Dante's understanding at the end of the Commedia. So what transpires from this experience, which incidentally causes Dante to faint for a second time, because once again, this is something that his conscious awareness is unable to process. So shocking this realization is when he goes through this, is that Dante has never been someone who despises the body. So he certainly is not, he cannot be understood as someone who condemns the bodily manifestation of love and beauty. But what we understand here is the fact that the body needs to be perceived and loved as an epiphany, a manifestation of divine love, which for Dante is always cosmic love, in its most transcendent and encompassing dimension. Whereas Francesca is describing a kind of possessive love in which two individuals and two bodies feel this bond as ending in that connection between the two of them. In other words, they cannot see beyond that and through that. love that unites them. This is the difference between a love that evolves in widening circles of love, and this love which ends in receding circles of death. Because if Paolo and Francesca's are at the top of hell, well, Gianciotto will be at the bottom of hell in a much smaller circle. So after this and another of other encounters in the upper part of hell, Dante and Virgil come, as I said last time, as I said before, sorry, to the walls of the city of this. And as I mentioned, the challenge here is to be able to get through these walls and have the devil, as Botticelli represents them, open the door so that they can enter. The devils don't want to open, and a divine messenger will force the door open for Dante and Virgil to get in. And as you remember, we mentioned that by entering into the city of this, we enter into a different dimension of the darkness or the shortcomings of the human soul, and that is malice at the beginning in the form of violence. The first form of violence that Dante confronts is just built into the walls of this city of this, where Dante meets Farinata degli Uberti. So here we have another encounter with someone who belongs to the generation immediately preceding that of Dante. Farinata is not just a Florentine among others. When he was alive, he was the head of the Ghibelline party of Florence. And as we saw last time, the Ghibellines in 1266 were defeated, and they were never to return, not only in Florence, but throughout Italy. And so Dante is quite bold in his conversation with Farinata at the beginning. And so, of course, we know that he was originally, he belonged along with his family to the party of the Guelphs. So that party that was contrary and enemy to the party of the Ghibellines. And so Dante is somehow proud and combative in his way of facing Farinata. But then, and he tells Farinata, well, you ended up in exile. And somehow, you know, the way in which he presents this is almost as if he were saying, good for you, with this animosity of the partisanship. And Farinata tells him, replies, and he says, if they, meaning my companions and my family, were slow to learn that art, okay, the art of coming back to Florence from exile, that is more torment to me than this bed. And yet, the lady who is ruler here, meaning Persephone as the embodiment of the moon, will not have her face kindled 50 times before you learn how heavy is that art. So this is a bit of a cryptic sentence, but it's quite crucial for us to understand. So Farinata is announcing to Dante his impending exile. The journey through the beyond that Dante narrates is set historically in the year either 1380 1300 or 1301. There are different opinions as to the exact year that Dante is referring to. But in any case, as Farinata says here, 50 times, 50 moons before Dante's actual exile. So in the narrative, Dante the Wayfarer is unaware of the fact that he will become an exile. And a number of souls through the journey actually tells him what is going to happen to him. And this is another major theme in the whole journey, is this announcement of his exile so that he can prepare himself to understand and face the exile. Of course, this is the narrative that Dante writes while he is already in exile. So it's the negotiation of exile through the poem while the exile is unfolding. That is the point here. Why is Farinata to be understood among or in the circle of violence? What is the lesson that Dante needs to learn here? Well, Dante, at the beginning of this conversation, is very proud of his being not only a Florentine, but a Guelph Florentine. And the moment he faces the party leader of the Ghibellines, immediately the animosity that has created so much strife into the city is built into their conversation. So he has to come to the realization of the fact that this is violence, and he is called to understand the consequences for civic life and for personal life of this kind of dynamic. There are a number of other important meetings with other people in the circle of violence that we don't have the time to go through. But as I said, after that, there is a new challenge. And that is this huge abyss, this chasm that is impassable. And just to make clear how terrifying this is, Dante hears the roar of a waterfall. And as we said before, this waterfall is caused by the waters of the three rivers that we have already encountered, falling down into the lower parts of hell. So how are Virgil and Dante going to go down into the next level of nether hell? Well, in this case, so as I said before, a divine messenger opened the door of the city of this. In this case, there is no divine messenger, but Virgil summons from the depths a monster. In fact, a mythical monster by the name of Geryon. And Geryon, as you can see in this very somehow creative 15th century miniature representing the episode. You can see here Virgil talking to Geryon, while Dante is talking to three usurers who are at the cusp of the chasm, and they represent another form of social violence. Well, Dante talks them, Virgil negotiates with Geryon, and so Geryon, who is a winged monster, will actually fly them down and deposit them at the bottom of the chasm. And so Dante tells us about these experiences of flying into further into the depths of hell. And you can see here once again the beautiful representation by Doré, who somehow gives us the sense of how terrifying this experience was for Dante. So the area of nether hell where they are, where they land, is that of fraud. And as I said before, Dante divides this into 10 pockets. And these 10 pockets, male bolge, so rotten pockets or evil pockets, are cover the largest section of Inferno, because these are cantos from 18 to 30. So even though Inferno is represented as a funnel, paradoxically, the upper parts in which one would gather the larger part of souls are contained are those for which Dante really to which Dante gives the lesser part of the poem. And the larger part of the poem is focuses on violence first and then fraud. And again, as I said before, this is really how we understand that this journey into the beyond of hell is a journey into the depths of human psyche. There is one very famous episode that I would like to dwell briefly on in this section of hell, and that is the encounter of Dante and Virgil with Ulysses. Now, Ulysses is a bit of a paradox, of course, because Ulysses was a character from Greek history that we know about through the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. However, in the Middle Ages, the Odyssey was lost to Europeans. Dante had no access to that text. And he, of course, had heard about Ulysses and the siege of Troy and the war between the Trojans and the Greeks through other sources, in particular, of course, through Virgil's Aeneid. But the narrative of what happened to Ulysses after the end of the siege of Troy, as told in the Odyssey, was unknown to him. So all that Dante knew was that Ulysses had traveled extensively through the Mediterranean after the end of the war of Troy. He had no knowledge of the narrative that he went back to Ithaca. 1. 2, we have this character from antiquity, a pagan, who is, and he is not the only one, of course, who is a damned soul into a Christian hell. So again, as we were saying before during the brief Q&A, here we see another dimension of this real priority for Dante of combining the dimensions of the Christian and the classical traditions. So what is the story that Dante essentially creates for his readers with regard to Ulysses' end? This is what actually Dante wants to know when he realizes that he is in the presence of the soul of Ulysses. He asks Virgil to inquire about how Ulysses came to his death, how he met his death. And Ulysses answers by telling us the story of how at the end of after the end of the war, he traveled through the Mediterranean, but he says there was an ardore, a burning desire in him of keep journeying, keep traveling, keep discovering, that prevented him from ever wanting to return to Ithaca. And so he says, well, I had a group of faithful people with me, and with them we traveled throughout the Mediterranean and then to what used to call the column of Hercules. So that place between Africa and Spain, beyond which the unknown of the ocean began. And when they reached that point, okay, Ulysses says, I addressed my my brothers of adventure with this brief speech. And this is another one of those very famous moments in Inferno that perhaps we should read together. So Ulysses says, brothers, you who having crossed 100,000 dangers reached the west to this brief waking time that still is left unto our senses, you must not deny experience of that which lies beyond the sun and of the world that is unpeopled. Consider well the seed that gave you birth. You were not made to live your lives as brutes, but to be followers of worth and knowledge. Fatti non foste a viver come bruti, ma per seguir virtute e conoscenza. And so Ulysses tells Dante and Virgil that they all became so motivated and so willing to follow Ulysses that they did cross the columns of Hercules, and they traveled in the open waters of the ocean. And where did this journey take them? I'm asking you now to visualize the earth as Dante understood it. So Dante knew that the earth was a sphere. The sphere he understood as being divided into two portions. One hemisphere was the hemisphere where there was waters, like the Mediterranean waters, but where it was mostly land, and land that was populated by human beings. And then another hemisphere, which he understood, of course, as being unknown, as being an hemisphere of waters, where no human population existed. So in traveling through the Atlantic Ocean, Ulysses says, I traveled and traveled up until the moment when I reached, we caught sight of a huge mountain. And it is when we arrived next to that mountain, that there was the shipwreck that caused us to die. So a huge tempest occurred and our boat sank, and we died in view of that mountain. A bit of a cryptic description of what that might have been when you read it the first time around, but if you read on the Commedia, you come to realize that Ulysses came in sight of the mountain of Purgatory. Of course, Ulysses doesn't know that that is the mountain of Purgatory, and Dante, when he hears Ulysses in hell tell the story, doesn't know either. But later on, when he travels through the mountain of Purgatory, and we as reader travel along with him, we come to this realization. So this encounter with Ulysses is especially fascinating because it is an encounter really between somehow Dante and not just a famous hero of antiquity, but travelers into the unknown that Dante comes to realize is really his own double, his own somehow hellish double. But it is through this encounter with Ulysses that Dante can measure his own ardore, his own burning desire, and of course, all of the risks that are written large into this journey that he is himself taking into the beyond. So this word conoscenza is really at the center of this little address by Ulysses, but it's also at the center of Dante's own questions about his own journey. What is knowledge, and what kind of knowledge can someone like him look for? What kind of knowledge? It's a bit like we saw with Paolo and Francesca. What kind of love leads to salvation, and what kind of love leads to hell? And in this case, what kind of knowledge leads to hell, and what kind of knowledge will eventually lead to salvation? And so it is by really facing the destiny and the words and the goals of Ulysses through Virgil that Dante can measure his own journey. After these encounters with traitors, Dante and Virgil once again need to face another obstacle, and that is a huge pit. And in this pit, there are a number of giants, the giants that represent the human race before the human race somehow. So it is through them, again, I like Gustave Doré's representation because it gives us a sense of the proportions here. As you can see, as Dante says, one of the giants will take them in the palm of his hand and will deposit them at the bottom of hell. But you can also sense here, again, that experience of the terrifying experience of being in a dimension that is superhuman, that Dante needs to confront in order to move forward into this journey. One of the things that becomes clear as you read Inferno and is the fear that Dante has to confront at every step, and the realization that there is no way that he can go back. So either he gets trapped into hell or he moves forward. These are the only two options. And somehow, in order to move forward, there are these obstacles that need to be faced and won, of course. So in this final challenge, Dante has no choice but accepting to be taken in the hand of one of the giants and to be deposited at the bottom of hell. And as we said, that bottom of hell is made of water, the water of the river Cocytus, which has turned into a frozen lake. And that's where the souls that have committed treachery are caught into that ice. And obviously, you can see how the image of the ice and how the souls are trapped into that ice is a very powerful figurative translation of what it takes to an individual to commit these kinds of acts of treachery. So the visualization is a physical projection of the dimension of the experience of the soul. Here again, we have a very famous episode, the episode of Count Ugolino. I don't think we really have the time to read any excerpts from this. But once again, this is a story through which Dante is forced to consider the kind of extreme and inhuman behaviors that the conflicts between Guelphs and Ghibellines and other various parties in Italy in those times were creating. So allegiance to an ideology or a political party ends up fostering behaviors that become utterly destructive and ultimately inhuman. And of course, here as readers, we have the choice of just thinking that this is what happened back then. But I don't think that this is how Dante wanted us to understand this. One of the realizations one of the reasons why he wrote the poem was for us readers to realize the universality of these human atrocious behaviors. And so it is up to us to recognize through these episodes those universal elements. At the very bottom of hell, Dante meets or witnesses the presence of Lucifer or Satan. And as you can see again in this image by Doré, Satan is represented with these wings which are flapping at the bottom of hell, and he says it's the flapping of these wings that is freezing the whole bottom of hell. There is no real encounter, of course, with Lucifer. One of the reasons being that Lucifer's mouth, Lucifer has 3 mouths, and in these 3 mouths, he's chewing 3 traitors. But what happens here at the bottom of hell, and I would like to you to understand this by looking at this drawing by Botticelli, is that Virgil and Dante are coming closer and closer to Lucifer, and then they end up really grasping at his body. And Dante says that when they come at the umbilic, at the center of Lucifer's body, Virgil tells Dante to turn around. And you can see here that then they exit hell by using Lucifer's body as the lower part of Lucifer's body as the way out. So the only way to actually read this is to reverse the drawing of Botticelli and see how they're coming out of hell on the other side of Lucifer's body. Dante is very confused about the experience. He doesn't understand, and he asks Virgil to explain. And again, in this 15th century miniature, you can see the representation of this inverted image of Lucifer, and then how Dante and Virgil get out of hell by essentially using the body of Lucifer as their way out. If we look at this other image of representation of the earth, so maybe this will help us understand a little bit better. We have, so Dante started his journey on this hemisphere of the earth, which is the hemisphere, the populated hemisphere, and he descended through hell to the center of the earth. At the center of the earth, he found the body of Lucifer, and by walking on and through that body, Virgil and Dante managed to pass that central point. And then he says, by following a little brook through a cavity in the bowels of the earth, they finally come out at the other end. And they will actually come out at the opposite end, so at the antipodes of where the journey started. And again, here, if I reverse the image, you see that they will land at the foot of the mountain of Purgatory, which is exactly the place where Ulysses said that they shipwrecked. What is the meaning of this reversal? We will explore this next time, but for now, let's just for a minute come back to the previous image. So for now, we come to realize that the experience of hell is this descent into the darkness of the earth, down to the very center. It's also a descent into the darkness of the human soul, to the very center. And at that center, once you have reached the very bottom, there is this turning around, which is also a change in perspective that will allow Dante to emerge at the other end and begin the ascent of the mountain of purgatory. But for this second experience to begin, the perspective of hell needs to be left behind, as somehow the antipodial experience or vision or understanding of the world that is the one that will be explored through purgatory. But Dante is also telling us there is no way that we can come to this reversal by somehow, like Ulysses did, by circumambulating the earth. The only way is through a confrontation with the darkness of hell, and then a leaving behind of that dimension once it has been confronted, understood, and brought into the light of consciousness. So these are some suggested readings for next time, which I will share with you through Arianna. But I think we have a few minutes for another little bit of Q&A.
Can I ask about Ulysses?
Yes, of course.
I'm trying to understand why he's being penalized so much. How is knowledge sinful? In what way is exploring or doing things? Is he not sort of attacking the scientific method that will be just around the corner in 100 years or so?
Dante is someone who had deep knowledge. For example, he had a very advanced knowledge of astronomy, of music, of all the sciences. When he had to choose a guild, he chose the guild of the doctors and the pharmaceutical people. So there was certainly on his part a lot of respect for what the human mind could do. And as I said, Ulysses is his double. So he knows that the yearning of Ulysses is his own. So for him, the question is, what kind of knowledge based on what motivation? There are two words that Dante uses to talk about the human conoscenza, okay, the human knowledge. One is ingegno, and the other one is mente. Okay, so mind and ingegno. Now, the word ingegno has given in English the word engineering and the word engine. And the very structure of hell is like a big engineering of sort. So Dante comes to realize that the human mind has a way of trapping itself into its own constructions, because it is the scheming mind that generates violence, treachery, and fraud. And so the point is not that of forfeiting knowledge, but the point is that of understanding in the service of what the human being puts as knowledge. Is this helpful?
Yes, I guess the as far as Ulysses is concerned, I was thinking his sin. His sin is just to explore the unknown. So under that scheme of things, then Columbus would be the new Ulysses.
See, but the beginning, we didn't have time to read the whole canto, but that journey is prefaced with this admission of which Ulysses is utterly unconscious. I mean, he is unconscious of the implications, where he says, neither, let me see if I can read the exact lines because they are so powerful. No tenderness for son, no duty owed to aging fatherhood, no love that should have brought my wife Penelope delight could overcome in me my long desire, the burning to understand how this world works.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the problem.
It's misdirected.
Yes, yes.
Thank
May
you.
I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody can answer it, but I'm fascinated by the notion that beyond the gates of Hercules, there are no people, and how that connects a few centuries on to colonization and the way the Europeans treated people they discovered, if you will, in the Americas. And was that a general point of view at this time in Dante, when Dante was living, that, you know, we the people here, and beyond that, there are no people, beyond the gates of Hercules, beyond our Mediterranean?
In the 1300s, there was awareness of the fact that Northern Africa was populated, but because travel by land was so difficult, there was no idea of where the continent of Africa actually ended. And there was knowledge and awareness of the fact that Asia was the other major continent. So, I am not sure that you can. I mean, yes, you can read this in a form of self-centeredness, which, as I said before, Dante realizes the moment he tells us. Let me go back for a second to that image. So our perspective is this. We think that the world is up because humans inhabit the upper lands, right? And therefore, this must be up, and whatever is below is down. Does it make sense? But in order for him to travel the mountain of purgatory, Dante needs to come to the understanding that human beings actually live down at the antipodes. So it is the shift in perspective that is necessary. Now, Dante could not have our understanding of the fact that there was another continent because he couldn't know that. But he saw very clearly the drive toward self-centeredness that occupies the human mind. And he said through this journey that in order for us to come to a realization of the complexity and the openness of the cosmos. First of all, we need to go through hell. And when we come up at the other end, we will begin to realize that what we considered up was actually down from another perspective. Am I making sense?
Amazing sense.
And when we come through the experience of purgatory, we will then see the kind of further relinquishment of human perspective that is required of Dante and of us as his readers in order to take that third leg of the journey. So yes, I think that Dante would have, you know, essentially laughed at the way in which human Europeans would have considered the colonization of the New World.
Could I ask a question about the rivers?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know the river Styx is connected to oblivion,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder about the layers of rivers, if they're like a shedding of self, of losing of self, the personhood of someone, and somehow the opposite of rivers is mountains or layers of sediment. I don't know if there's a further symbolism you could tell me about the rivers.
No, this thing of the rivers is a bit of a passion of mine. This is not something that Dante scholars tend to emphasize very much, but I am really fascinated by the way in which the story that is told at the center of Inferno about the nature of these rivers, as again, as Dante devises it, because he takes the names from the ancient pagan tradition of the netherworld and brings it into this Christian, which, as you begin to sense, is you know, just calling it Christian is very reductive, because it's a very complex and very articulated and somehow not so Christian dimension. But this idea that all of these rivers are formed by human tears that are shed through the centuries and the millennia, I find this amazing. The souls in hell are, of course, completely unaware of this. And this is, again, another proof for me of the fact that the souls in hell are souls that are unaware of themselves and who keep repeating the pattern that they chose to follow in life without coming ever to any realization. It is Virgil who explains the story of the rivers to Dante, so that Dante may understand. And the moment you come to understand that, you have a realization of what hell is, that the souls that are trapped in hell will never have.
Right.
Daniela.
Yes.
Hello. No, I was not here for the first lesson, but this seems to me like, I mean, there's with a great deal of symbolism and Dante working obviously within the understanding of the world that existed when he was alive, but it seems like a real struggle for secular and scientific understanding of the world, no doubt, you know, in the shell of a broader religious understanding, but he doesn't seem to be, at least yet, searching for a traditional religious understanding or religious explanation of all the thoughts and feelings he's having. This does seem like sort of a push towards a secular scientific understanding. I'm sure he'll try to frame it in a religious context ultimately, but it seems very, well, I don't know how else to describe it, but except for his appalling understanding of gravity, he's trying to explain things in a relatively empirical, scientific, objective way. Do you think that that's true? It is a, I mean, it's kind of a scientific investigation, exploration, retelling of his experience. He's not crouching everything in religious terms. It's secular in that regard, in my thought.
Now, my reading of Dante's journey is one that aims at creating in the reader a sense of estrangement. So, which I believe is the sense of estrangement that Dante wanted to create in his readers. Whereas the most traditional readings of the Commedia are readings that come from a place of the canonization of the work. And this canonization in Christian terms has taken a number of centuries to happen because, well, as you said, you weren't here last time, but Dante was not only sent into exile, but his way of thinking was considered deeply problematic in the 14th century, and the Commedia was not really available in its integrity to all readers in the Catholic world up until the late 19th century or even the beginning of the 20th century.
I could see even that the idea that you could get to hell and come back out would be extremely problematic, because that would be contrary to eternal damnation.
Yes, exactly. So, but see, Dante is not saying, well, we can explore hell and come out. That would have been a kind of Ulyssian perspective. Dante has this amazing insight that you go through it up, actually down to the very bottom in order to be able to come out at the other end of the process. And this is something that personally, I think not even Freud understood. Only Jung understood that. And we as humanity, maybe if as Jung said, and probably Dante also said, this is the beginning of the age of Aquarius, maybe we are begin to sense that now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Daniela, what about the romantics? Shelley with Prometheus Unbound.
Yes.
He went through all that suffering, feeling trapped and isolated and in despair. And then he finally learned how to come out of it. I don't remember the details now, but I remember studying that. And the Ancient Mariner with Coleridge.
Yes.
Did they copy Dante, or
all of these romantics were in awe of Dante, and I think they understood the implications of Dante's journey much more than the average people who would tend to read the text in a canonical format. If you can get out of that shell of the canonical, whereby Beatrice becomes the allegory of theology, then the whole poem appears to you in a completely different perspective.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, it's 8:30, and I think we can close our journey here, but there is another leg of the journey next Monday. So into Purgatory. So we are looking forward to having all of you with us. And let's hope that finally next time we'll be all be able to be joining this journey together, this trip together.
Marina Carter has her hand up.
Oh, okay. I didn't see.
Yeah, she's been waving it.
Marina, can you please unmute yourself?
No, I'm sorry. I think I accidentally did that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you to
Sorry, I saw this hand waving.
And we'll see you next Monday for the third leg of our journey. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you to everyone for being with us.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Exceptional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely excellent. Oh, you've changed my thoughts about Dante entirely.
Well, that's that's wonderful.
That's the aim of the objective.
Thank you, Arianna. Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you to everyone.
Grazie a voi.
Grazie. Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.
I can stop the registration.
Yes.